Hello, 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 and welcome to the Cucina, Aurora Kitchen Witchery podcast. Welcome back. Thanks for joining us on our series Conversational Witchcraft. Guys, today we have, oh my God, it's the amazing Amy Blackthorn. Okay, I'm like ridiculously excited, and you'll see why as soon as we get into this. Interview. But let me tell you a little bit about Amy. She's amazing. She is a professional intuitive and a best-selling author of Blackthorn's Botanical Magic, Sacred Smoke, and Blackthorn's Botanical Brews, which is incredible. I have it right here. It's incredible. She has appeared on HuffPoLive, Netflix Top 10 Secrets and Mysteries, in an episode about supernatural abilities, and the AP Newswire. Amy lives in Delaware, and she is currently writing Blackthorn's Protection Magic, a Green Witch's Guide to Self-Defense. How cool. I can't wait to get into this with you. Amy, thank you for being here. I am ridiculously excited to have you.
I'm so tickled to be here.
Oh, I love that you use the word tickled. Generally, you know, I'm like, don't fucking tickle me. But in this case, let's be tickled.
There is consent. We shall have tickling.
There's consensual tickling on the Cucina Aurora podcast. That's a new one. So, okay. I had sworn that we had never met, but then you were like, I met you at this place and I bought this stuff from you. And now I'm looking at your face in like real time and I'm like, maybe we have met in person. Have we?
We totally have.
At Spoutwood.
Spoutwood. Yep. Every year since the beginning of time. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, Spoutwood Fairy Festival.
I miss it. I'm very sad.
Don't you though? I mean, there was something, for those of you who've never been to a fairy festival at all, this was like the one that all others should be compared to, in my opinion. Would you agree? Agree, right? Now, what was your first experience at Spoutwood?
Oh, goodness. My older sister is 3 years older than I am. So she started going with her friends when she was a teenager. And I got to see the posters in the local witchy stores. And they're just really complex and beautiful and such tiny, amazing details. It really makes you believe that you have to be at this event. Mm-hmm. Little tiny mushrooms and fairies and wings and amazing things. And it gives adults the chance to give themselves a childhood that they didn't have. I didn't have it. I don't know about anybody else. But I did not have one. So the minute my sister came back and I was old enough I had a car and I could go, I'd pile friends I had an 88 Buick Skyhawk.
Oh my God.
And we venture into Glen Rock, Pennsylvania. I grew up, I was born and raised in Shrewsbury, which is the next little town over. So once we moved to Hereford, which is on the Maryland side of that line, it was like, okay, I can go and do a thing. I know where I'm going. Let's have an adventure.
Wow. That's amazing that you have been going there since you were in your teens. I mean, I didn't really discover the the fairy culture in that way until I was well into my 20s, my late 20s. And it was because of my company, Cucina Aurora, because I started doing events. And people were like, oh, you should do this one. You're like, all right, yeah, I'll do that. And then eventually we started doing bigger shows and in different places. I'm originally from New York. Mm-hmm. And now I live up here in New Hampshire. But, people would say, oh, you got to do Spoutwood. You got to do Spoutwood. And I'm like, what is this thing, this legendary, what is this? And then I started applying to be a vendor because, especially in the early days of my company, I was like, I can't afford to go someplace, but if I can make it a business expense,
exactly,
then I can go to this event, I can write off everything, it will pay for itself, and then I'm good to go. So we started we're on the waiting list for that show for like 3 years, and to vend. And then eventually they were like, hey, yeah, do you want to come out? I was like, oh, what do I want? What kind of question is that? And for us, it's a 10-hour drive, 10-hour, 12 hours, something like that, coming down from New Hampshire. And I mean, to be honest, the whole anticipation of the whole thing was just, even just driving and now, did you vend at Spoutwood as well? Or did you just come as a
patron?
No,
no, I just went as a patron. One of my dearest friends was always had her tent there for years and years. Mayfair Moon Corsets and Costumes. She was a couple doors down from you. Yes. Always. Nikki is amazing and has been a dear friend for almost 20 years.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I can chill in her tent when it gets hot and the sun's too ridiculous. I can have some water and a place to sit down.
Yeah.
And I was worried that if I vended, then I would lose some of the magic and the freedom.
It's a true thing. It's a true thing that when you vend a show like that, you definitely lose. Although, I'm just going to be like really super honest.
Yes.
I love having my own space. I love having my own space to retreat, and I do not patron well. Like I always feel like I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know where I'm going. And off in places where the company is well known, people are like, oh, you're the girl with the olive oil. Oh, you're the, and I'm like, yes, I am. Thank you. I really want to watch this show right now. So
I need a sandwich. Please back up a bit.
and I love that, but I like having the space to retreat and be like, okay, I can be me in this avenue and then me in that avenue. And then if I feel like I need a break, I could go back to the booth. I think I would have loved to have seen Spoutwood as just a patron. Mm-hmm. There's such a culture amongst the other vendors where you get there a little early and then you leave after everyone else is gone. So there's a magic that happens in all of these spaces, whether it's Spoutwood Fairy Festival or some of the larger pagan gatherings. There's a magic that happens in those before and after hours. Would you agree?
Oh yes, my favorite part is where everybody's setting up and you're sort of keeping your eye out at that one booth that's had your eye, and you're like, oh hey, if you want to trade, I got some olive oil, you got some fairy wings, let's do a thing. That's my favorite.
Yes, and like the seeing everyone arrive, and I love, so kind of a tangent, but a million years ago, I used to work at Disney World, and it was also that same sort of like, I loved arriving before guests and I love leaving after guests, because you get to kind of like soak in the energy of the before and after, as opposed to when you're in the middle of it, where you're just like, everything is happening so fast, So it was such a pity that this, for everybody's listening, going, oh my God, we have to go to Spoutwood. It doesn't exist anymore.
Well, it sort of does.
Sort of. The issue is that the grounds, it was called Spoutwood Fairy Festival because it's on a farm, a giant privately owned farm called Spoutwood Farm. And that is no longer, the farm is still there, but the event got too big that the town basically said, you can't do this here anymore. And that was a fun year when we had all the mudslides happening and like cars were sliding down and things were flooded.
Cars were flipped upside down on their heads. Yeah. It destroyed the area where we had parked for 30 years. Yeah. It was ridiculous.
Yeah. So unfortunately they cannot have that show there any longer, but they have moved it to, they call it now, it's the Marshy Pond Spring Festival or Summer Festival. Spout was always Beltane weekend, or like the weekend closest to Beltane, and now Marshy Pond, I want to say, is
Litha.
Yeah, it's the closest to midsummer, so it's like mid-June. But definitely for those listening, check it out, because holy fuck, it's amazing. And apparently that's where we met.
Totally.
Awesome. A million years ago. Yeah. So now, Amy, I am loving the Botanical Brews.
Oh.
Okay. So I will tell you flat out, I am not much of a alcoholic beverage consumer. Mm-hmm. It's simply not. I always order fancy drinks. Like I go out somewhere and I'm like, oh, this drink looks amazing. It's made with elderberry liqueur and pomegranate juice and pickled artichokes or whatever. And I'm like, it looks amazing. I want it. And I'll spend $12 on a drink. I'll take one sip and I'm like, oh, I don't like it. And then I wind up with seltzer. So like tonight when I'm drinking it, this is my fancy drink for you, Amy. It's seltzer with a splash of pomegranate juice. That's how fancy I am. But one of the things I really love about Botanical Brews, Blackthorn's Botanical Brews, for those of you that don't have it, get it, is that you add these, like, you know, if you don't want to make it alcoholic, you could do this, or things that you could substitute. So can you tell me why you decided to add that?
Oh, it was one of the first things I made sure that I decided, like when you're writing, you have these things and you have your musts. And as the children of alcoholics, it was mandatory that I provided sober solutions and sober substitutions to make sure that even though there's alcohol in the book, I wanted to make sure that no one felt left out. I have a chronic migraine patient, and for a year I was on one of the drugs that they give everyone. It's awful, and you can't have any alcohol. It would do very bad things to you. I thought it was just a suggestion. So a friend and I are at a home show, and they had a mead tasting, and they had these little thimbles of mead that you could taste. That is Lilu singing her song.
I hear the Lilu puppy.
But I got a thimble full of this beautiful mead, and we walk away. I figure this thimble can't possibly be anything to interact. And I start giggling like a lunatic and telling my friend who I'm there with, I can feel my feet. Like it was bad.
Oh my God.
Sobering me for at least a year. I don't drink a lot because my parents are alcoholics. It's something that I enjoy. So if I'm going to enjoy it, I know I need that level of control that says, I'm going to have one, so I'm going to enjoy it. Yeah. It's going to be something that's really artful and evocative and important, rather than just something to do because it's Friday.
What a good point. Now that must have been, obviously that's a struggle to be raised in a situation where there was strife around alcoholic beverages, and then to be able to heal in an emotional and spiritual way, to come out on the other side and be able to create such a beautiful piece of work around something that could potentially be really harmful or triggering for you.
Exactly.
How hard was that for you?
There was definitely some work. Luckily, I am a fabulous person who is under the care of an incredible therapist who I adore. It was very interesting because it's something that I felt like magic sort of happens around these beautiful, potent beverages. My background is British traditional witchcraft, and we used real potable beverages in our rituals more often than not. We always made sure we had apple cider and things like that for our sober friends, especially at an open event. Absolutely. But it was really important to me that it be given this space of not just solemnity, but respect and honor. And
do we have a puppy in the room?
Oh yes, Lulu is coming up for her.
And for those of us that are going to be able to watch this video, we may be able to see, I see a little tiny puppy face. She's not a little tiny puppy. She's a big pitty girl.
She's a big girl.
Oh, her name is Lilu, and she's a rescue pitty, and I could just see her eyebrows, and she loves her mama.
Oh, my doodle. That's a good girl. Go lay down.
She's got to go into her bed.
Oh, yes. This is where her mama is, so she has a bed in here, too.
Yes, I have lost the cats. They were eating, but now they're like, oh, fuck you, you're not paying attention to me, I'm out. So you were saying that you really wanted to give specifically alcoholic libation a certain level of respect because of what you've been through.
Exactly. Yeah. I understood that it's really a powerful thing. And where we find power, we have magic. It can be really incredible and very intense in ritual, and especially if you're able to enjoy ecstatic dance or ritual movement, especially. All of these things really fit well together. So I wanted people to understand that, okay, yeah, some you see advertisements for adult beverages, the Super Bowl, there's beers, but there really is magic in that reverence in that moment that we can embrace, but not to excess.
Right. There's a difference between indulgence and overindulgence.
Exactly.
And I think that's true with everything. You know, I feel like everything is about balance, and whether it's food or drink or sex or magic, whatever it is, extremism in any form, in my opinion, is not good. So if you're an extremist when it comes to, I'm going to drink all my beer, probably not great. You know, if you're extremist when it comes to chocolate, again, probably not great. So I think that's really, really important. And you made a point in saying that there's magic around the reverence for specifically these, adult beverages, just specifically saying like alcoholic beverages. As a kitchen witch, I definitely feel like there is, and I've talked about this before, the alchemy of kitchen witchery, the taking one thing, creating something that nourishes the body. The alchemy, I think, of brewing, the alchemy of distilling, the aging process of wine. There's so much magic in that, not to mention skill and art. Can you speak a little bit to that, to the magic of that?
Absolutely. One of the first realms of magic that we have in historical record is the magic of brewing, which was, in these times, it was the sole purview of women, until people realized they could make a buck off it, and then this sort of got pushed out.
Until men realized they could make a buck off. Not that we don't man bash here. We don't do that, because men are amazing. But sorry.
So yes, the idea of transformation, the idea of a cauldron being a vessel of transformation and itself a liminal space, is so incredibly magical. Because think about wine. If you do just one tweaked little thing wrong, you wind up with vinegar instead of wine.
Right.
Once we go into those liminal spaces, once we go into the crucible of transformation, you don't know what comes out on the other side. You can guess through practice and study and careful acknowledgement of the alchemical process, but you're not guaranteed anything. You're not even guaranteed to come back out of that crucible. I am living proof of this thing.
How do you mean? How do you mean you're living proof?
I went into my second degree. My in traditional witchcraft, there's challenges that happen over time, but it turned out that my third degree challenge was to live to see another day. I was killed by a truck. I died. I was declared dead.
My goodness!
I broke all my bones, and
goodness!
They declared me dead on the scene. I was gone. I was not here. That crucible can be very literal.
When? How long ago was this?
2002.
Whoa.
Yeah, it was like 5 minutes after I turned 21. He fell asleep behind the wheel, and tractor trailer does not.
It's not forgiving.
It's not forgiving. Doesn't mend well with doesn't mix well with bones. I broke 27 bones in one shot, and spent the next year in the hospital.
Learning how to live again.
Yes, I was told I'd never walk again. Like probably a week in. It was.
And you're like, I'm Amy fucking Blackthorn, bitches. It's like, I'm gonna do what now? Fuck that shit.
I had just gotten my black belt 3 months before, and the doctor's like, this is really the only reason you're still alive. The level of physical fitness you have, the strength and the determination that you have. Other people call it stubborn. I prefer to say tenacious.
Absolutely.
Tenacity is a thing. But yeah, they were like, hey, you're probably never going to walk again. And it took 5 years before I could really walk, as like a person.
Wow. So when you're talking about transformation, we're not just discussing this in, all the stirring the cauldron and the alchemical process of changing grapes in a wine. We're literally talking about you leaving one life and entering another.
Yes.
Through chaos.
Mm-hmm.
how has that affected your magical workings?
Oh, that's such a good question. So I was in my first coven. So I found my first book of witchcraft when I was 11.
Wow.
Oh yeah. I came out of the broom closet to my family when I was 15, and so the minute I turned 18, I ran out and joined the first coven I could find. Never do that.
Never do that.
Never do that.
Never do that. Don't marry the first guy you date. Don't join the first coven you find. Yeah.
Nope. Those of you playing the home game, do your research. It's date around a bit.
Yeah.
It's good stuff.
By the same token, though, you may learn what you don't want.
That's absolutely valid.
I'm just a little positive spin there. But go on.
So I had already had it in my mind, the witch that I was and the witch that I was going to be. I was in training to become a member of the clergy. There was a teaching coven, not a, sit and admire the pretty lights coven. And so stuff can be two things.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely call it what it is.
But it was really important to acknowledge not just that I had been no longer living for a bit. It was actually a lot longer than anybody actually wants to not be alive. But it was so important to embrace that life that I had sort of taken back for myself. I was given a choice on the other side of the veil, saying, "Hey, it's not actually your time. Do you want to stay or do you want to go?" Like, think about the stuff that you'd miss. Think about your reasons for coming back. Like, make an informed decision.
Right.
And I said, I've got so much stuff I really want to do.
Well, you're so young, 21.
Yeah.
Wow.
And barely living for those 21 years. So I definitely knew that there was things I needed to accomplish. And so I made the choice to come back. They actually revived me in the helicopter flying me to the trauma center.
Oh my God.
Oh goodness. But yeah, I broke both my arms, both my legs, my pelvis, my face, my nose, my orbital. Like I was just a smushed person.
Wow.
So it made sure that my magic, that my witchcraft, that my understanding of magical practice was solely rooted in myself. Not in the materials, not in the candles or the incense or the ritual theater, which I still adore. But I didn't have it. I couldn't have it. I was in a really great hospital that not only made sure that I was taken care of, but made sure they reached out to my high priestess as a clergy person with the respect given clergy.
Yeah.
Because of the severity of my injuries, I had to have a private room. So my whole coven came up from Maryland into Delaware, where the hospital was. It was the area level 1 trauma center, and we were given in privacy to have a Samhain ritual in my hotel room, right there in the hospital.
Yeah.
So they said, "Look, we're going to need about an hour," and they're like, "Well, we will make sure that you're not interrupted." They got vitals and medications and everything beforehand, so I had an hour to myself. And we had our Samhain ritual in my hospital room.
Wow.
So not being able to rely on the fun stuff, the ritual theater aspect, the incense and the candles.
Right. I'm gonna wear this fancy cloak and we're gonna be outside under a bonfire, and what I like that you said the ritual theater, like I feel like the Hollywood version of what people think we do. You know, not being able to have access to that, and I would think for quite a while, and realizing that, hey, I carry this magic within myself. It's not external; it's internal.
That's a huge part of the understanding that came out of that. Was aesthetics are nice. I mean, they look nice on Instagram. They're fun, but that's not where your magic lies. This spirit-driven meat suit is where that magic lies.
Right. So how have you used that experience, that outlook, that perspective, which I think is a really unique perspective? And honestly, if I can be so bold as to say, people that haven't gone through real shit, life-changing, life-altering, stare in the face garbage may not understand that. That people throw around terms like find your power and make sure you stand in your power, that kind of thing. And I don't think that people really understand what it means to find your power, to stand in your power, or to do the inner work and to really get into the garbage within ourselves to find that, like you said, that magic, that energy is within us. But how has that experience and that perspective transferred into your workings in terms of what you're doing today in writing these books and running your company?
It's so beautiful when you can reach within yourself and birth, I suppose, something greater than the sum of its parts. It's not just me, and it's not just, it's Blackthorn's Botanical Magic was essential oils, and Sacred Smoke was all creating plants and incenses and smoke cleansing rituals from the ground up. Being able to bring something out of yourself and sort of put yourself off to the side while you're going through this birthing process. They call it book birthing for a reason. I mean, you know,
truth. Ain't that the truth?
that there's so much therapeutic stuff that's happening when you're writing a book that people can't grasp, and it's very similar because I had this epiphany when I was writing Blackthorn's Botanical Magic. My brain said at some point the little light clicked on, and I said, this book is going to exist after I no longer exist. I'm no longer on this plane. My bones will be somewhere being taken care of by someone. And my words will live on. And it was a huge moment where I'm just like, Jesus fucking Christ, what is it? What am I doing with my life? How is this my life?
How is this my, that's so, that just is very, very, very real. And I think for so many people that we have that, especially if you've written a book or done something creative that is tactile, that will last forever, the book birthing. And like you said, there's so much emotional shit. There's like serious psychology that happens when you're writing a book that is your truth, right? I don't know what it's like for everybody else. I don't know what it's like for everybody. I don't know what it's like if you're writing a fiction novel. I don't know what that's like. I would assume the process is the same. When I first started writing A Kitchen Witch's Guide to Love and Romance, I would have, and I still do, I have this all the time, like one minute I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm writing a book. And the next minute I'm like, crippling self-doubt. Oh my God. Right? Oh my God. And then I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. I want to just read this paragraph to everyone. Oh my God, what if no one likes it? And then you have those moments where you think, like you just said, holy shit, like you said that my book is going to last after I'm gone. And I literally had a little bit of a heart thump and went, oh fuck. Oh my God. Oh my God. You mean like when somebody's going to, in a library somewhere, 20 years after I die, somebody might pick up this book and be like, hey, I found this penny olive vodka recipe in this Kitchen Witch book and it's delicious. That's legacy. That's crazy. Does that blow your mind?
Every day.
Every day.
Every day. I wake up in the morning and I'm like, holy shit, somebody in Poland knows who I am. Like, that is completely outside of my realm of understanding, right? Even 5 years ago.
It's insane. And that kind of like bringing it full circle, sort of you having come through this transformation process and finding this new life and the meaning behind it, being able to reach other people, being able to share your views, your magic, your spiritual practices, your ideas with other people that will live on. So you have this, I chose to live, right? Being in that horrible accident, being dead, choosing to come back into this realm so that you can technically, wait for it, live forever. Whoa, dude. Oh my God. You just blew my fucking brain open. On that note, we're going to take like a 2-second break, hear from our amazing sponsors, and we'll be right back. Dude, seriously. You just blew my brain up. Okay.
Yes.
Do you need to pee, take a drink, stretch, anything?
I'm good. Okay. I'm super jammed.
Alrighty, my dear. And here we go. We are back on the Cucina Aurora Kitchen Witchery podcast for another episode of Conversational Witchcraft with the amazing Amy Blackthorn. Oh my God. All right. So, holy crap. Your story is just like, I'm just blown away with your journey. And you had said that you found your first witchcraft book at 11 years old. Now, oftentimes I ask people, you know, what non-pagan influences were you exposed to as a kid, as a teenager, that sort of shaped your path or were, you know, indicative of who you might become as a witch? But you're telling me you found the path of witchcraft at 11 years old.
Yeah.
So how did that happen?
So I come from a larger family. I have 4 sisters. I'm smack dab in the middle. So I shared my bedroom with my older sister Holly for most of my memory. The 2 younger girls, Brandy and Katie, had their own bedroom, like did their own thing, had their little secret handshakes and bunk beds. So I felt bad for Holly for a while because I'm 3 years younger. So at least if she had to share a room with somebody, it could have been a little closer. Mm-hmm. And anybody who has younger siblings knows the first way to get your younger sibling involved in your business is to tell them to go away. Tell them you're not invited.
Uh-huh.
And I need my space. Right. Oh, well, guess where I am right now?
Right.
Right up in your business.
Right.
So one day, my sister and her best friend in the whole world, Christine, who was awesome, come home, and there's giggling and there's rustling noises. Like they probably stopped at the local convenience store and get gum and candy and
right
ridiculousness. And Holly says, "You got to go. You there. I don't care. This is your space too. Get the fuck out.
Get out." Yeah.
So obviously I had to figure out what they were giggling and rustling noises were involving, because okay, you've now piqued my interest.
Right.
There, whatever that was went out the window. So the evening progresses. I go and do something. Christine goes home. We go to bed for the evening. Holly falls asleep.
Oh.
I'm waiting for this. So I like Pink Panther slide out of my bed and across the floor on the tippies of my toes and my fingers over to where her book bag is, open it one tooth of the zipper at a time
to make sure that,
yes. Right. She can't get caught.
Right. Yeah. No. That would be the worst.
No, that would be the death of me, part 1.
Right.
So I get the bag open and I look, and there's Wicca Guide for Solitary Practitioner by Scott Cunningham.
The Cunningham. Wow.
So I like stick it under my jams, tippy toe back across the room, slide back into the bed, and not even a flashlight because that attracts too much attention. Right. I am reading this shit by the light of the gas station a block away through the window. And I dive right in, and I read the whole thing in probably an hour or 2. And I was immediately entranced. I had to have everything that's ever been written about witchcraft in my brain right now.
Right.
We weren't raised with any particular denomination of Christianity. We just went to whatever church was closest, because that's, Mom and Dad can sleep off your hangover while I'm over here to do my business. So they'd arranged for someone from church to come pick us up, and we'd go and sort of like, oh, that's a thing you do. Okay, I'll be over here.
Right.
So at 11, finding something that spoke to me so viscerally was life-changing. We lived not too far from the local library, but it was a very small, as I mentioned, a very very small neighborhood in northern Maryland. The library had one room, and it was probably 500 square feet.
Wow.
And so I went through and I read everything in the nonfictions I could. Started in the 133s, and
right.
How do I? Oh yes, my witchy books are next to UFO theory and it's like, okay, let's figure out what's happening. And I think the first book I picked up after Cunningham was those Sarah Liddon Morrison, black cover with the big angry red lettering, Witchcraft Volume 3, like Time Life.
Great. That's great. That's great. So, what about your sister? Did she also get on the same path, or was she it was just a joke?
No. It was. She actually wound up giving Cunningham to my older cousin, Tabitha, in between me and Holly. So. And she got a copy, and it's like Oprah. You get a copy, and you get a copy.
Yeah, like the whole little family of little witch.
So, but nobody knew anybody else was doing anything. So by the time I came out of the broom closet at 15, I sat down with my peep, who I dedicated Blackthorn's Botanical Magic to. She was the first person I told. I'm like, Peep, you sit down. I got to talk to you. She is that person who is unconditional positive regard in your life. Nothing I could do would be wrong. Like, let's figure it out. I'm here for you. I love you. I support you. Wow. And she's like, oh, that's cool. I gave her my copy of Cunningham. She read through it. She's like, oh, this seems very cool and very nice. She went on to go and find local witchy stores to buy gifts for me. As a matter of fact,
so supportive.
The video, there's a big silver pentacle behind my head. It's like a laminated plate.
Yeah.
It's giant. It's probably 2 feet across. That is a gift from Pete for Yule in probably 2007.
Wow. How wonderful it is to have someone in your life who is so supportive of your path. I mean, especially at such a young age.
A week later, my sister Holly shows up at Peep's house and goes, "Hey, Peep, guess what? I'm a witch." Like, expecting this huge dramatic reveal. Right. And she says, "Oh yeah, Amy told me about that last week. Like, what else have you got?" And she was devastated that I stole her thunder. Completely unbeknownst to me.
Didn't know. No, but that's so great, because you guys growing up being able to share that. I can't even imagine. I grew up in a very traditional Italian Catholic family.
My mother's maiden name ends with a T.
Yeah, like very, very traditional Italian Catholic. And so there was, but like you, like you're going to church and you're like, whatever, it's just a thing you do. Like it didn't resonate, So I haven't heard anyone yet that I have interviewed that has found the solid path at such a young age. Does that impact like the way you see new witches now? Like you see people that have found the path and they're like in their 40s and you're like, oh honey, or are you like, no, come on, let me tell you everything? Like how do you, or young witches, like how do you respond to them knowing that you were so young when you found the path?
I had so many people, even people I respected, who at that point when I was so very young still want to give you the verbal head pat, like, oh, there, you're
nice.
You're only 18 or you're only whatever, mm-hmm. You don't know your ass from a hole in the ground.
Right.
And it's like, I appreciate that you have that lived experience, but don't treat people that way, right? Especially now when it comes to something as personal as religion.
Absolutely.
Telling your child, your nephew, whoever, that their sincerely held religious beliefs are just a phase is the most insulting thing I can think of at the moment.
Agree. Agree 100%.
I absolutely adore, like I make ridiculous noises when I find someone has found one of my books and it's their first book.
Yes.
Like it's such an honor to be able to sort of nudge them out of the nest, like go and experience life and find that beauty anywhere you can. Life can get pretty dark sometimes, but having something that you can look to, something that you can connect with is so, so important. If I didn't have my coven or my ritual or my belief system, when they're telling me you died and that's pretty much not going to get any better from here.
Right.
Like that would have annihilated someone.
Yeah. If you don't have that pillar of faith, you know, people throw around the word faith, but faith is, for me, something that is a word that means belief in something larger, more powerful than myself. And if you don't have that, something like what you went through could really destroy a person, because that faith, that belief in something larger than yourself, or belief in your own inner power, is the bedrock in which we build our lives, right? Yes. So, and I think it's especially true for people in the pagan community, because our spirituality, whatever brand of paganism you study or believe, is so very real. It's so very tactile. We're talking about elements. We're talking about earth. We're talking about, you know, drinks and food and herbs and things you can touch and feel, and the energies within them. So it is really, really real and really grounding. How important that must have been for you to have, and to have, you know, if it was me, I found the path at 18, I only would have had, you know, 2 or 3 years of the very fledgling foundation of my spiritual path, if something like that had happened to me at 21. But you had it for 10 years to build upon. So that's just fantastic.
I believe that I made a believer out of my doctors.
Yeah, I would say you did.
Well, that's the thing. The day that, so I was in surgery for an entire day, them putting me back together like Humpty Dumpty. So it's a Saturday. My first full day being a person is now Saturday. And the doctors came in, and the CNAs come in to change your sheets, and they're trying to figure out how to change my sheets, because I'm in so much pain that someone walking into the room, I would scream.
Oh my God.
Just from the vibration of that floor. I stood up out of that bed, 2 broken legs, 2 broken arms, broken pelvic, like my pelvis cracked in half. I stood up out of the bed quick enough for them to change my sheets. The speed at which I recovered, a good portion of my person, led the doctors to say, like, what exactly is your secret here? Because you should not be progressing the way that you are. And if this is something I can replicate with another patient, you've got to tell me what I can do. And I told him, I said, I have a tradition of 500 witches who are doing magic so that I will live to see tomorrow. And he's like, shit, I can't replicate that.
No, you absolutely cannot replicate that. You had mentioned before about someone, you know, when you hear of someone finding your work, finding one of your books, and especially when it's their first book. But let's talk about your upcoming project, because that's super exciting. The Protection Magic book. Would you share with us a little bit about what that's going to be about and what we can anticipate from you in terms of, is it similar to the books that you've already written? Is it totally different? Tell us all about that.
So this is it's longer than Sacred Smoke, but it's not as big as Botanical Brews. So it's sort of in that middle ground, which is hard because I talk. That's how I teach. I'm a storyteller. So the thought of trying to smunch things in just doesn't work. I have spent the last almost 15 years, a little bit more than 15 years. I've spent 15 years in executive protection and personal security.
Whoa.
Yes. So Amy,
that's like your Muggle. That's like your Muggle world.
Yep.
That's fucking awesome.
Executive protection.
Sorry, I am really excited about that.
Yay. And there's been super fun things like getting to dress up in fancy clothes and no one knows that you're, Jane Bond.
I love it. I love it.
So awesome. But there's definitely difficult parts because a lot of the executive protection detail things, like it eats your whole life.
Sure.
There's not a lot of room left for other things when you're so involved with, I was the personal bodyguard for the CEO of a $30 million company. And it was like, I worked 7 days a week, sometimes 14-hour days. And there was no life left for anything else.
For life. Yeah.
For life.
Yeah. There's no room left for life. No.
So I was I was really excited to be able to transition to getting more in touch with my witchy self full time.
Yeah.
I left executive protection in my day job and now can be a witch 24 hours a day. But it's so important that I felt like in the books that I've had in the past, I felt like that was missing. Like I had to be two people. I had to be, Muggle Amy during the day, and I had to be witchy Amy, when I'm doing intuitive readings and talking with clients. But those two pieces of myself were so difficult. I transitioned from one-on-one protection to a really fantastic job where I was the head of security for 2 high-rises in Delaware here. So that's 45 floors full of people whose lives were my purview.
Wow.
Lots of stuff, lots of, oh my goodness, getting woken up at 2 o'clock in the morning.
That's a lot of responsibility. That's a lot of responsibility.
My goodness, yes. They're the 2 largest buildings in the state of Delaware. Wow. And one day, one of my officers, I'm getting in, I was always at my desk at 5 a.m. I'm not a morning person. This is not a thing that happens. No, not a morning person. So I'm coming in at 5 a.m. and I'm relieving one of my officers to go downstairs to monitor the cameras. He leaves at whatever, 8 o'clock in the morning. And he says, so, I hear you're a witch. What? Excuse me? What did you say to my face?
Wow.
I didn't talk about my Amy Blackthorn life at work.
Right.
That's not a thing. I've had issues before. I've gotten death threats. I've had people show up at my house, threaten to burn my house down, kill my pets, kill my family. Like
it's so super when people are so loving and supportive of other people and super respectful of other people's,
life and religion
practices and privacy. It's the best.
Super great. Super great. So I made sure that those 2 things were completely separate. How did you find Amy Blackthorn? He had done an illegal background check on me to figure out like what I was hiding. Like, I am your boss, first of all. Oh, my life is none of your fucking business.
Seriously.
And thought it was the funniest shit ever. He's just really amused himself. 30 seconds later, I swear, he gets, as fast as he got down to the basement, the guy he was relieving called me to see if I changed the color of the orchids that are, the orchid arrangement that's behind me. I'm like, no, sorry, those were got changed out a week ago. Nice try. Like, let's make jokes about it. So,
I never really understand when people try that, like they want to go after and make fun of the witches. Like, if you really believe that we are who we say we are, maybe you should be a little nicer. Maybe we are not the people you want to mess with.
Perhaps.
I'm just going to put that out there. Just going to say
that. Wow. So I'm thrilled that I have a project where I can incorporate some of the additional pieces of myself. I can not just help people experience and understand, but embrace the idea that your protection magic should also include your physical person. It's not just about making sure no one curses you or hexes you or
right.
It's also about making sure that you make it to tomorrow.
Yeah, we're not just right. Oftentimes protection magic is make sure you put salt on your doorstep and hang these herbs and carry these stones with you. Great, awesome. But what about the physical realm of protection being, like you said, like your physical body, making sure, people can physically hurt you, be it attacks or accidents or I lived through a house fire. So that kind of thing, these are real tactile things that can happen to a human being.
Yes.
Whether or whatever spiritual practice they have. So how cool is it that you're able to take both sides of the knowledge that you have and combine them together? I think that's incredibly valuable to the community. I really do.
when we look at how we comport ourselves as magical practitioners, there's often a lack in that area. It's like, okay, if I do everything, then everything will be great and nothing bad will ever happen to me. And that's nice.
It's not true.
But it's not what happens. It's not how the world works.
No, life is still life.
Life is still going to happen to you.
Life is still going to happen. You know, when we lived, my husband and I lived through that fire, and it's about 10 years ago, 11 years ago. And I remember, you know, watching the building burn down and saying to him, like, I don't know how this happened. You know, I do so much protection work. I was always doing protection magic. I was always using garlic. I was always, you know, doing protection work in our home, in our household. And he was like, well, yeah, it worked. We're alive. We shouldn't be, but we are. And I was like, oh, that's a good point. Because you're right. But I think that sometimes you don't see that. And we also don't put those things together in the physical world, right? Because life still happens, shit still happens, bad things are still going to happen, because there are things that are out of our control, even though we're witches, you know? So to have that perspective, I think that's a really great, I think it's a really great offering for you to be able to make people aware.
Yes. When you, in the Green Witchcraft tradition, it's important to take a note of the plants that are occupying the same space that you are. Mm-hmm. You know, what is their proximity to your home? Are they in your front yard, or are they just at the edge of your property line? How the closeness of you and the proximity to your house tells you how important it is. And getting to know and recognize these plants and develop an allyship, a relationship with them, tells you a lot. It was this spring/summer of 2008, and I was doing my beating the bounds, my relationship with my land, and I noticed the fence. We have a small area. Got a new fence for the girls. Had a smaller fenced in area for the girls my dogs to go and play and romp in the backyard. But the 2/3 of that circumference was now ringed with poke.
I don't know what that is.
So I will tell you. Poke is a weed that gets about 6 feet tall. It's bright purple leaves and purple and green. Sort of reminds us of rhubarb, but it gets purple berries on it.
I have tons of that.
Yes, it's amazing. It's fabulous.
It's beautiful, but poisonous. Very poisonous.
Right.
Like even the birds won't eat it. Very poisonous. Yes.
Very bitter. Appalachian women will eat the first berry that ripens, and it's a anti-inflammatory that will last for a year until the next berry ripens.
Wow.
It is very powerful medicine. It is the plant itself is edible if it's 6 feet or 6 inches or under, but it takes a lot to prepare it.
Yeah.
So don't poison yourself.
I won't. I swear to God.
So I'm looking at this. I'm like, what is this telling me? If it's poisonous, it's protecting itself. It can protect you. It could protect, there's that whole relationship. I say, okay, what are you protecting me from? What is going on here that you're like, bam, you exist now. We're in the woods. My property backs up to a nature preserve.
Yeah.
So there's lots of trees. Like, where did this come from?
Mm-hmm.
To just bam. I'm like, okay, I gotta do some work on this. It turns out that I had a stalker. A convicted sex offender who had decided that I was whatever was going on in his head.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So I'm admittedly, I've had this conversation 100 times. I'm not a garden witch. You would think I would be because I'm a kitchen witch, but I have a black thumb. I cannot grow anything edible except my herbs, which I've been working with for 20 years. So I'm okay with, my rudimentary, not nowhere near Amy Blackthorn level. Okay, let's just be honest. I have thriving peppermint, but you can't kill peppermint. Like you could try and it won't die. Obviously I have rosemary, sage, thyme, basil, all the standards, lavender, dill, all the standards. Cannot grow vegetables for the life of me. We have a fungus here that's like in the ground and there's just no way to get rid of it. But it's really interesting that you mentioned about the protection, because when we bought this house 4 years ago, literally surrounded in poison ivy. And I mean, poison ivy as tall as a grown man, in the front yard. It's all, we removed everything in the front yard, but there's still tons of it in the backyard because it's sort of like a wooded area and we don't go back there. So it's fine out there for right now, and it's far away from the house. It's the border of the house, which now that you're having this conversation, I didn't put that together, but wow. And it's like the poison ivy, and then like in front of it is like rows and rows of this purple berry plant you're talking about.
Poke, it's good stuff. Poke is so fun. So a lot of people like to make ink out of the poke berries. You can find out how in the back of Blackthorn's Botanical Magic.
Blackthorn's Botanical Magic, pick it up.
In the very back, the last chapter is divination with different plants and how to develop relationships with them. But one of those things is how to make pokeberry ink. And because poke is a protective plant, I have a special journal set aside to write down my anxieties and my worries and the things that I want to be protected from. Because poke ink is natural, it fades. So as I want those worries and anxieties to fade, I write them in poke ink. And in a year or two, they're gone. You can sort of see the outline of where they were. And so you can remember
them and have reverence for them, but they have left. How fucking cool is that? Amy Blackthorn, you are an absolute delight. I am super excited about that new book coming out. The full name is Blackthorn's Botanical Protection. Can you give us the
Blackthorn's Protection Magic, a Green Witch's Guide to Self-Defense.
Oh, I love it. I love it. So I have one last question for you before we wrap up.
Yes.
And this is a question I ask every guest. Because, and you probably have a really good handle on this because you do so much work with herbs and foods and drinks and all that sort of thing. But if you could have me as a kitchen witch make you one meal, what magical meal would you have me cook for you?
One of my favorite meals out of the entirety of my OU, it's a pork tenderloin. That is, I use cocoa as a dry rub, and then I sear it on both sides, and then I tuck it in the oven with an apple cider reduction that just breaks down all the tough parts, and it's incredible. And when the pork melds with this apple cider reduction that you've created, it is the most delicious and decadent. It has all the love magic of apple. It has the nurturing fortitude of and love that's associated with chocolate. It makes this gorgeous sauce that you can put over potatoes. I do like chocolate and red pepper on some roasted potatoes, a little bit of onion. That's the kind of
that's awesome.
I would love for you to make.
Basically, what I'm doing is on the show notes for this, there's going to be a link for a recipe that you've inspired me to create.
Yay!
So I'm feeling like you're talking about the pork with the cocoa, but I feel like it should be a cocoa coffee rub.
Yes.
Right. And I want to layer it with some sort of, I love the apple cider reduction, but I also feel like you need I want to put like a dark sort of balsamic glaze on that.
Yes.
And I want to lay it over like a sweet potato mash.
Yeah.
Right. That's what I'm getting. So I'm going to work up that recipe, and that recipe will be in the notes for this episode. And speaking of the notes for this episode, Amy, where can our guests find you online? Do you have a website? Tell us your social media, all that jazz.
All the things that Amy does. So you can find me at amyblackthorn.com. I always update it with the up to the minute news with where I'm writing, what I'm happening with. There's free downloads for the first 30 pages or so of all of my books. So if you want to check them out before you buy them, there's links where you can download those. Blackthornsbotanicals.com will take you to my tea shop, where you can also get autographed copies of my books.
And the tea shop is amazing. It's amazing. We could do a whole episode just on tea. Okay, let's be honest.
My pandemic craft was making spell candles. So those are on the website. There's oils from Botanical Magic in there. You can find my podcast on Anchor, the Blackthorn Grove. You can do all the fabulous things that I chat about with people. We've got some really amazing guests lined up. So
I would not, I'm no pressure. I'm not like inviting myself over or anything, but if you would like, I would be.
No, I'm totally inviting you.
I'd be having
because I loved chatting with you. Let's see what else. Amy Blackthorn, author on both Facebook and Instagram. There's
Excellent.
also all sorts of fun reviews. There's tarot decks that I feature on Instagram. Awesome. I just did one for the Spacious Tarot. This one is the spaces in individual tarot cards. Like the Fool is the cliff from the Fool's perspective.
Oh, cool.
So you get to,
cool.
In writing Blackthorn's Protection Magic, I was looking for tarot inspiration to talk about using the majors for protection magic.
So cool.
It's a whole chapter.
So cool.
But the Death card grabbed me by the face. I love the Tudor rose that's in the traditional tarot on the flag. And I'm like, okay, you can see the skeletal hands reaching for the Tudor rose, but the wrists, the vines are starting to reclaim the bones of death. And it's
wow. Amazing. Amazing. Well, listen, this is all awesome. I have had the best time with you. Thank you so much for coming on. Check her out, Amy Blackthorn. All of her information will be on the notes for this episode. Check out her books. My favorite, Blackthorn's Botanical Brews, which we unfortunately didn't really cover too much of, but the drinks are amazing and they pair well with great food. So like, she's going to make the drinks. I'm going to make the food. We're going to have a fucking party. It's going to be great.
Yes, best
Amy,
party ever.
Thank you so much for being here. Until next time, I leave you with many blessings and so much gratitude. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much.